You can run, numbers through a compound interest calculator, and it's shocking. You think about, socking away $50 a month. Well, that may turn into, $500,000-$600,000 over the course of decades if you do that. And when you start thinking about it like that, seeing what money turns into in the long run, it begins to become a little bit easier to start saving and investing.
If somebody makes the commitment to say, I want to win with money, right? I want to make good decisions. I want to reach my financial goals. What do you think should be the first step for them to get started on that path?
I'd say the first thing you need to do is figure out actually what your goal is, because a lot of people say, I want to get right with money or be better with money, and they think they need to go open a savings account and start investing, and there's like no end goal. And so it's going to be very difficult. I know at times in my life when I've had something that I'm really working for, it's 1,000 times easier to focus in and actually take action towards that, as opposed to some arbitrary goal of I'm going to be better with money or something like that. And so whether it's retirement, a vacation, I want to buy this or that, Lamborghini, whatever you want to buy, actually have a plan and target that you're working towards. And then, like I said, come up with that plan at a time when you are motivated, and then automate as much as you can. Automation doesn't mean that you're necessarily, giving up all control. Like, I know all of my bills, I watch all of it, and I just track on the back end. So instead of sitting down and putting money in envelopes or something, which is just brutal for me. Some people love it. For me, it's brutal. I track it all on the back end. So I know how much I'm spending on groceries, how much, I'm spending in electricity. And if anything comes out of line, I can dig into it and see what's going on there. So it's definitely a tracking process. I look at all my finances and my investments 3 to 4 times a week, but I'm not having to go in there and tinker with it and make decisions on it. I mean, I'm talking about a few minutes that I'm going in and checking this stuff. It just becomes a habit, after you do it so many times.
So what should you be looking for when you're building out that budget, when you're starting tracking your expenses for the first time and painting a picture? What you should be looking for and striving for there?
I think if you haven't done anything yet, the first thing to do would be go through your expenses for the last, say, 3 to 4 months and kind of get a baseline of how much you're spending and write all that out. And then look at those and say, maybe I'm spending $800 a month on groceries. Is that really where I want to be putting $800? And maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but, go through line by line. It's a little bit of work on the front end, but then you can make this process and it's not as much work going forward. I would start there, write down your debts. Obviously, if you have like high interest rate debt, credit cards, things like that, you probably want to tackle those pretty quickly. And then define goals and start allocating monies towards those goals. So if I'm going to go on vacation to Europe next year, I need $4,000, start transferring over to a savings account, get it out of my checking account, start transferring over some amount so that I can take that vacation in a year or two. So I think it's a matter of tracking, because if you don't track, you're not looking at what you're spending, it's really hard to improve what you don't know what you need to improve upon.
And if I'm hearing correctly, you want to track it for the purpose of isolating your expenses and your sources of income so that you're left with something in the end that you can use either towards savings or an emergency fund, or eventually to start some investing and making the money work for you. Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to be almost impossible to get ahead, or impossible maybe, if you're not spending less than you're bringing in. So you have to get to that point initially. So either you increase your income by some means, or you're going to have to reduce your expenses. And even like I look at my budget stuff, I call it budget stuff, all of my expenses, the tracking of my expenses. I do that 3 to 4 times a week. And I still have months where I'm like, oh my goodness, I spent, $500 eating out this month. And so instead of beating myself up about it, because you don't want to feel too bad about what you're doing, I just say, next month I'm going to trim back a little bit. And so maybe I'm spending $300 a month on average. Next month I'm going to try to spend less than 150 or something like that.
Right. And I think one of the reasons why people sometimes are discouraged from taking these steps and doing that work, because at the end of it all, they might get to a point where they say, I guess I could put away $50 towards my retirement or whatever that financial goal is that maybe 10, 20, 30 years removed, just like you said before. It may not be so exciting to do that. What do you say to them to change that mindset and start being excited about actually executing these steps?
Yeah, again, retirement is boring. I mean, what is retirement, you know? Now, if I say that I want to get a log cabin in Wyoming and I'm gonna, go and paint every morning and then I'm gonna walk the dog in the afternoon and go on a hike every afternoon and I need this amount of money to get that. And so now you've got a game plan, figure out exactly what you want to do, what retirement looks like, what the age is, and then you can start building a plan to work towards that, start getting excited about it. $50 a month may not seem like much, but you compound it over years and it can actually turn into something.
And you mentioned the key word here is compounding as well. And I think people sometimes underestimate the positive of it, and also underestimate probably the negative of it when they're on the flip side, of the
Sure,
compounding
sure.
interest. Can you just speak about that a little bit, just to clarify for people what that means?
So compounding, think about exponential curves versus a linear curve. So linear curve, you're going up in a sequential line, one, two, three, four, five. Exponential curves, it's going to be very small incremental pieces or growth the initial stages, and then it skyrockets up. And so you can run, numbers through a compound interest calculator, and it's shocking. You think about, socking away $50 a month. Well, that may turn into, five, $600,000 over the course of decades if you do that. And when you start thinking about it like that, seeing what money turns into in the long run, it begins to become a little bit easier to start saving and investing.
I love what you said about having the right mindset and having the right mental image to get you motivated to take these steps. So, for example, not just talking about retirement, not just building wealth and being rich, right? But having that cabin in the forest, or having the financial freedom to be a significant donor to a charity or to an organization that's really, really important to you, right? It's those
Mhm.
types of goals that are very specific, like much more specific and real, that from your experience helps people be motivated?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the question I ask myself is if money was no object, I could do whatever I wanted to, what would I do? And then figure out how much that cost and then reverse engineer a way to get to that point. And I think that would help a lot of people as opposed to just saying, I'm going to put away $100 for retirement. That's boring. I mean, you imagine yourself sitting at home watching soaps during the day,
Right.
when you're 70 years old. I mean, nobody's excited about
You
that.
almost don't want to do that. You're almost like, I don't want to put money towards that at all.
No, it's brutal. And so, yeah, I think coming up with a clear defined, there's been a lot of research on this too. I'm not just making this up. I mean, coming up with clear defined goals and then figuring out a way, what's it going to take to get to that goal? And again, it can be, cutting savings. Of course, you can only cut so much out of your budget, or finding ways to increase your income possibly.